Welcome to the Education Marketing Leader podcast with Chris Raposo. If you're looking to dive into the latest industry insights, draw inspiration from education success stories, or just want to sharpen your marketing skills, you're in the right place. Here, we bring you a diverse range of voices from experts and leaders in the field, offering you a unique blend of professional development and practical strategies. Whether you want to understand your audience better, stay updated with the latest tech trends in marketing, or expand your professional network, we've got you covered. So while you're driving on your morning commute or winding down after a busy day, let's explore the dynamic world of education marketing together.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Education Marketing Leader with Chris Raposo. Today, I have the pleasure of welcoming Sally Cameron. She is the communication strategist at ThreeC Strategy and former VP of College Communications at Bristol Community College. In fact, she was there for 31 years, and she is also the former president of NCMPR. Sally, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Chris. Thanks for having me. I'm very excited to talk about my passion.
Well done. Me too. Looking forward to this one. So, Sally, as I mentioned, you have an impressive background, a career of 31 years at Bristol Community College, and now you work as a communications strategist at ThreeC Strategy. Now, when we scheduled the episode, you discussed your passion of yours, which is mentoring young professionals to help them get started in their careers as communicators. Could you share some of the key experiences that you have that shaped you to approach mentoring and training young professionals that are up and coming?
Well, I was a young professional at one time, and I remember that. I think that I always considered it my job to make sure that I am continued, that I have a legacy where the people who I worked with became better and went on to add terrific things to the profession. I was with a four-year college before starting at Bristol, but community colleges really became, for me, the ultimate American invention of education. And I just loved being part of that success story. So that love and passion for community colleges, I think, is what really drove me as an educator and a communicator to make people just great at what they do.
Absolutely. Now, I always say community colleges are the backbone of America as somebody who's a community college grad. But it's very interesting to say when you said that you wanted to leave a legacy, pass your knowledge on to the next generation. What's your why behind that? Was there a pivotal point in your career where you had someone pour into you to help you advance in your career?
I was hired by the assistant to the president at Bristol Community College, and they were starting. So this was in 1985, ancient history. And my boss he was assistant to the president and was starting an institutional advancement department. So hired a director of development, director of public relations, that was me, and a director of alumni with a full-time administrative assistant. So I was mentored by Richard, my boss. He really taught me how to be an administrator. And certainly for him, it was to his benefit that I became able to manage budgets, able to think strategically. But he was one who told me everything. I did not report to the president, which I think is absolutely critical for this position, but he shared everything with his 85 best friends. So I knew everything that was going on at the President's Council level, and he shared it with me and helped me think about it and understand it. So without that, I would have just stayed a technician, I think.
Mhm.
I would have been, I brought great writing to the table. I knew something about media relations. I knew something about publications. And really, he helped me become an administrator. And I was grateful for that. And I wanted to pass on his legacy to the
Mhm.
next generation.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So you got the opportunity, you were hungry, and you took the bulls by the horn, as they say, because he let you in on some of the things that were going on that you may have otherwise not had the opportunity to see if it wasn't for him. And then you took advantage of that knowledge that you learned to better the university, the college that you were with. So in our pre-interview, you also mentioned that you often hire people who might not have the most experience, but have a strong passion and desire to do the job. So what kind of qualities do you look in young professionals that indicate that they have the potential to take the bull by the horns and run with it?
Well, well, first of all, I was a staff of zero, me, when I started. And at, throughout my 31 years, the rising boat or the
Mhm.
rising tide raised all boats. And as the job got bigger and more complicated, and there were more opportunities. Remember, I said 1985. There was there was no email, there was
Mhm.
no social media. Publications were still. I did my first publication on my desk with a T-square and measuring board and a waxer, and I say that to people currently in the profession. They're like, a waxer, like what? They just don't understand it. So I think that for me, I needed, as not a digital native, although comfortable with computers,
Mhm.
able to take on technology. I was looking for people who added to my skill set. I didn't want to replace myself, but I wanted to add to my skill set and in the department. And by the time I was very, very fortunate to be able to expand my department substantially.
Mhm.
And so I started with zero, me, and ended up with 14 when I retired. And so this is a long answer to your question. I'm sorry. But as I looked at my career, what was really important to me was to stay fresh, to be questioning, to be learning as I went. So I always looked for people who wanted to learn, who wanted to grow.
Mhm.
Um, I was a, I, as I said, the only thing I know I do well is write. So I knew I could write. And if somebody was not a great writer, but a competent writer, I could make them a great writer. I spent a lot of time helping people understand beefy verbs, not using prepositional phrases, not using Bristol Community College is proud to announce, that sort of stuff that you could put any community college name in and it
Yeah.
would be pertinent to them. So I questioned people when I interviewed them about their interest in growing and where they wanted to be in 5 years. And if they
Mhm.
wanted to be with me in 5 years, that's fine. That's a good answer. But if they wanted to be someplace else, then that's fine. It just showing a growth mentality.
Yeah.
Let me tell you about one exercise I always did with finalists. I gave them a task, and it was usually to build a semester campaign for recruitment. And I would give them a budget in tokens, not real money, but because they wouldn't necessarily know what things cost, but a budget in tokens and a list of possible media. In fact, one that comes to mind is I asked them to promote an open house, and I gave them media that was pertinent or not pertinent. For example, a bus ad. That's not pertinent for an open house because it's just too long term. And I would have people present their campaign to me, and if they were making decisions that I didn't agree with, to talk to them and ask them about why they made those decisions. So for me, it was really, really important that people were open to critique, were open to defending their own position, and not fainting from that idea that they know everything. And sometimes when we were talking as a team, I would say something and people would disagree with me. And I really encouraged that. I wanted to see that. So those are things that were really important to me. And I think invested a lot of energy in the team.
Absolutely. No, that makes a lot of sense because there's a fine balance between having a collaborator, but not having a yes man who just says yes to everything you say and just runs with it and waits for you to give them orders, or somebody who feels like they know everything and are combative with every single advice you're trying to give them. So that can be exhausting as well. So finding that middle ground is something you definitely want to strive for. Now, with the recruitment strategies, you mentioned that you started this in 1985, where there was obviously no internet job boards. Back then, to the last couple of years before you retired from Bristol, what were some of the most effective recruiting strategies that you employed to get young professionals on your team? Were there any unconventional methods? Do you see communicators on your campus that you were like, oh, this person may be a good fit for our school?
Actually, I hired 2 alums. One was a intern in communication. The other, and so she graduated from Bristol. She did her internship with us and was just awesome. She was just terrific. And we had the opportunity to give her interesting projects as an intern, which I think is really important for interns, because you don't want to scare them off by just making them clip newspapers, which is what I did in one of my first jobs in communications. We didn't have a newspaper clipping service, so I had to read every paper. But sometimes they do have to do some of that stuff because you learn from it. So that was one thing that really worked well for me. Internship with somebody who really wanted to learn. So she was willing to participate in our efforts. And after she graduated from Bristol, she was going on to Bridgewater State to get her bachelor's degree, and we hired her. We hired her as a liaison to our Center for Business and Industry, as it was called then. And we had some real struggles with communicating with them. And so there was a real benefit to assigning somebody to them.
Yep.
And having somebody on the ground with them. The second alum I hired was graduated already from both Bridgewater and Bristol, and he was a radio personality. And he was one of the ones I gave the open house assignment to. And he was, again, somebody who was just really anxious to support his alma mater, really believed in community colleges, and came around to really becoming a star in this field, still in community colleges, managing a department. He left Bristol and managed a very large department. Now he's at another Massachusetts community college and doing great work.
Yeah, that's the beauty of hiring alum. There's a certain affinity with some of these people that went to your school. They have appreciation for the community college, especially if they've been successful in their careers. So they always look back at that. And if you can get them on board, you have super fans that are actually working with you, kind of like student ambassadors, but it's almost like alumni ambassadors working for you. And their stories, their personal testimony speaks volumes to future students to see that this person went through here, this person now does that and is successful in their role. There may be opportunity for me too, as somebody considering the community college as well. So I think that's really smart. But I really like the open house assignment as well, because it makes them think outside the box. It's not just a theoretical thing. It's actually, hey, this is probably something I have to do. Do I actually like doing this? You know, then they start figuring that out as well. So I really like the way you went about these unconventional ways to get some of the star employees that you fostered over the years that may have moved on to even bigger things, you know, but they will always look back to you as somebody who paved the way for them. So definitely left a legacy there. But let's talk mentorship a little bit more. How do you balance providing guidance while also allowing people the freedom to grow on their own and make mistakes?
Well, that's always a challenge because making mistakes costs money and time.
Yep.
Can affect your recruitment. But probably the majority of the time when we've tried something, experimented with something, it worked. So, of course, when you make a mistake, there's two things that you have to struggle with. One is the president, who may not really appreciate that, but also protecting your people to be certain that they don't take the hit. So I did eventually get to serve on the President's Council, and my my credo always was, if we screwed up, it was me, and if we benefited, it was my team. They came up with this great idea, we ran with it, and it also helped that we got awards for many of our projects from NCMPR. And so nothing makes a president happier than awards.
Yes. So you took the blame, you gave the praise. That's something I've learned from Simon Sinek. I listened to some of his leadership, and that's what makes the best leaders, that protect their team, take the blame, take the brunt. They may never know about it, and then make sure that they shine.
No,
Because
they knew about it. They
yeah,
knew about it.
they knew
But
about it.
I would always say, here's our problem. How do we solve it?
Yeah.
But they didn't know that I got beaten up for it.
Yes. But if it came out, then they would go above and beyond for you even more, because they know that you had their back. So that's great leadership right there. And the other thing is that these mistakes, you want to make sure they're not monumental mistakes that go up to the president. So maybe that's another thing we can talk about, is the training and equipping the next leaders to make sure that when they start out, if they make a mistake, it are minor mistakes. And then as they build their confidence and you build the trust with them, you can give them bigger projects. They run them by you. They're more comfortable than to ask you for advice or ask somebody else for advice before they just publish something and that blows up. So what type of training and development opportunities do you believe are essential to equipping the next generation of higher ed marketing leaders?
Well, I think there's been a lot of talk about how in marketing and public relations, you don't need to be a good writer anymore because there's AI, there's all sorts of ways that you can develop stuff. And I just don't accept that. I believe that the on the ground, boots on the ground school skills will be the ones that will always pay off. So one of the things I did was assign people to committees. So at my college, the non-unit professionals, we were defined by what we weren't, which means we weren't in the union. We were not necessarily required to be on committees, but I worked with the president, with my colleagues, to find places that would make sense for those people to be. Mm-hmm. So then they could be in a smaller group and other people can get to know them, and they can express their opinions, they can do work for the committee and make their mistakes there. And if a chair would come to me and say, so-and-so didn't understand this project, I said, well, how can I help you with that? And have you spoken with him or her about that? Mm-hmm. So I think that getting our team out into the trenches was really important. And I think that my modeling, I didn't like making mistakes. I can tell you, I have a whole list of them. And any typo, we used to laugh that we would send a publication into the president and look at our watch to see how long it would take either my first president or my second president to walk across the hall and say, did you know that there's an and instead of an and? So,
yeah.
So seeing how I respond to that, I wasn't always great at it, but I always tried. I remember losing my temper with somebody once.
Okay.
And I always regretted it.
Yeah. Yeah. Once it comes out of your mouth, you can never take it back.
Correct.
So talking about, you're sending something over to the president or the vice president, and then you're looking at your watch, already expecting somebody to come back and pointing out a mistake. How do you create a supportive environment, or how would you advise somebody else to create a supportive environment in higher education that fosters growth, learning, and innovation for young marketers? Because if they get beat up all the time, they get hesitant, and then they may not create their best work.
What I tried to do within my own team is foster the idea that the best effort is what's necessary. If they blow it, then to help them understand what they did. To me, if somebody made a genuine effort and just made a mistake, hey, that's me. Always, typos, all sorts of stuff happened. But in the light of eternity, it's not that important. What matters is that we protect our college, that we help our college and our students and our staff and our faculty be proud of who we were,
Mm-hmm.
are proud of who we are. And even if we make mistakes, perfectionism is the oppressor.
Mm-hmm.
We only learn from mistakes. No, I take that back. We also learn from successes, but mistakes are an opportunity to be better.
Yes, fail forward is one of the things that I always like to say. Try it, fail forward, and then sometimes, especially with the typos, sometimes it's all about slowing down a little bit and give yourself enough leeway so the deadline doesn't approach, you feel rushed, and all of a sudden you just make all sorts of mistakes. So it's another thing there. But we talked about some of the pitfalls and some of the errors, but can you share some success stories of young professionals that you mentored and that have evolved in their careers? There's somebody that you're particularly proud of?
Many of the people that were on my team when I retired are still in community colleges and doing terrific work. One is Patrick Stone, who was the one I gave the assignment for promoting the open house.
Mm-hmm.
And when I retired, I gave him the project that, the paperwork from his assignment. And he admitted to me that he was just scared. And when I talked him through it, and it brought up a trauma for him. He didn't say that until he'd been there 5 years, and I was leaving. But he has done terrific work. I'm so proud of him, and he's going to be president next year, or the year after, of NCMPR. There's the designer who worked for me is also working for Patrick, and John Fonseca, who we hired as a video person, and he's gone on to do terrific work again at community college. The intern that I hired is still at Bristol. So I'm just so thrilled that these people are still boots on the ground and benefiting the organization of community colleges, and they're doing amazing work. And I have said this to them, they are leaving me in the dust.
Well, those are great examples. I know Patrick Stone. I am a connection with him on LinkedIn, so I've been following him for a while. John Fonseca, small world. I'm actually going to interview him as well on this show, and I'm going to have an intro call with him today. So I'm going to tell him you said hi, that I talk with you. So that's the beautiful thing about NCMPR and community colleges. It's a tight-knit community, and they help each other out, and appreciate one another. So really, really grateful for you, for them, and for the continuous work that you all put into it. But let's talk future a little bit. How do you see the field of higher education marketing evolving now that there's AI and people think they don't have to write anymore? What's most important for future leaders to adopt and develop to make sure they stay relevant?
I think it's really important to pay attention to what's going on. 1985, I was hired, and I told the man who was hiring me, who, as I said, mentored me into being an administrator, that my job requirement was a word processor on my desk. And he was just shocked. He was like, well, I got you secretary, so the secretary will type for you. I said, well, I write on the computer. Now, all of these people who are going to be listening to your podcast are going to say, what? Of course you have a computer. I was the first administrator to have a computer on my desk. And of course, in not very much longer after that, everyone had a computer.
Mm-hmm.
And email evolved and the internet evolved and all sorts of channels opened up to us. And for me, it was really critical to pay attention to those things. And if I didn't understand it, find somebody who was going to help me with it. So that's one of the reasons NCMPR was so terrific for me, because you'd go to these conferences and one of the things that I learned about at one conference was personalizing postcards. And again, no duh, but my son was a student at Bristol, and a letter came to him, and he opened it, and I said, "What is it? What is it?" Because hovering mother, and he goes, "I don't know," and he threw it over his shoulder. It said, "Dear student," and it was announcing registration and advising. And I thought, well, that's not good. How many other people just say, I don't even open it? The only reason he opened it is because I told him to open it. And that made me start thinking about how can we personalize things for people. And one of the things that I learned about was the technology that would print individual postcards with people's names, their advisor, the advisor's hours, and the date for registration. And I thought, that's the solution. That something personal to them, small, pretty. And so we did that, and we got a number of Paragon and medallion awards for it. And I remember one day walking across campus and seeing, and it was a ripoff. It was a ripoff card that they could put in their wallet. Walking across campus and seeing a discarded postcard, but with the card ripped off. So the student kept it. I was like, yes. And we had a significant upswing in timely registration that spring. So learning about the technology is important. That's also what I did with social media. We were the first community college in Massachusetts to have a Facebook page. And I didn't entirely understand it, but I had an intern that semester who did. And she set it up, she researched it, and we launched it. And we got a Paragon, gold Paragon the next year for social media. Now, and that was because we were one of the first, and nobody else was doing it. But I think that really points to one of the most important things about hiring somebody who doesn't have your skill set, because they help you to think and to push out of the box and to not do things the same way as you always have.
That's right. They help you innovate, and you were pioneers in the Facebook thing, and that's why you got the award, because you were one of the first ones to be brave enough to move forward. And you may hire somebody who has a certain skill set that you never thought about, or a different angle, and they'll get you in the right direction towards the future there. So let's say somebody's going to meet you at a coffee shop. They want to be a higher ed marketer, or they aspire to be a higher ed marketing leader. What's one piece of advice you would give them that they should have? What kind of mindset should they have in order to take the baton and run and move up the mountain?
I think be always learning. I'm still learning. I look at AI and I think, again, I'm a writer, so I'm a little bit suspicious of AI, but I think I need to understand it. And so I've been starting to play with it. Okay. I'm a better writer than AI is, but they're faster than I am. I think that is really the most critical thing, I think, is to always be learning. Mm-hmm. I used to read every memo that came across my desk. I used to follow the media in my area to see what the issues were. You just can't, you always have to be curious and dogged about pursuing new things and not abandoning the old things. But the old thing that is so critical, that will always be important for communicators, is to know your audience and write so that they understand it. Or not just write, communicate with them so that they understand it. And it is purposeful.
Always be learning. That's a common thread when I ask people that. Always be learning, always innovate, because marketing changes so frequently. The world changes so frequently, and you want to be on the beat of what's happening or be left behind. This was a super episode. Thank you so much, Sally. How can people get in touch with you, and just give us a quick elevator pitch what 3C Strategy does?
So 3C Strategy has been able to work with citizens groups to promote spending in small towns in Massachusetts. So one of the things that the first job I worked on was building a new high school in Fall River. There's a program in Massachusetts where the Commonwealth will give you a percentage of the cost of it, but then the rest of the community needs to pay for it. So we helped convince the city that they needed this new program or this new school, and that they needed to pay for it, but they were going to get 80% of the cost paid for by the Commonwealth. So a communications issue. And those were I've had a number of those projects, and I have been able to work with Patrick and John and Andrew, our designer, who fortunately didn't tell me to not let the door hit me on the way out. And they have supported me in that work. So I've been able to continue my relationships with them.
Perfect. How can people get in touch with you?
Please feel free to email me at sallycc@comcast.net. I am on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook. I am not on X. But I'd be glad to answer questions and even have a conversation on the phone if someone would like to.
Perfect. I will tag you in the show notes so people can get in touch with you easily. Sally, I really appreciate you. Thank you for your time, and thank you for your insights. It was a wonderful episode. All right.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Of course. Anytime. Bye-bye now. Hey, thanks so much for tuning into the show today. If you enjoyed it, don't keep it to yourself. Share with your friends in your network. And if you have a moment, I would really appreciate a review of the podcast. That'll help other people find the show as well. Tune in every Thursday morning at 8 a.m. when I release another episode. Take care now. Have a good one, friends.